LRBT2, main conclusion, question 25. And so we're looking for the conclusion of the ethicist argument. So they say both this one acronym and another acronym are clot dissolving agents. So I'm honestly, I don't like letters like that. I'm just gonna be like, okay, you're agent one and agent two. Like we got Bond and I don't know, Kim Possible. Who the heck knows? We got two clot dissolving agents. That's a fact. Recent studies show, so we're getting into some facts here. These are probably not going to be the main points. Whenever we see recent studies, we bring up recent studies to prove a point or to give us background information. So, what are they trying to say about these recent studies? The more expensive agent would save at most two more lives than the other one. Okay, so basically, one is going to save two more lives out of every 50. Cool. However, since the relatives of the patients who die simply because they're given less expensive medicine will be particularly grieved. Okay, so we're going to give you a little hint here. If we ever see since, that's an indicator of a premise. So that's reasoning. It's like, okay, so because we know this information, the financial saving involved in using one thing over the other must also be weighed against such considerations. Okay, so we know that there's clot dissolving agents. One is more efficient out of the other. The expensive one is better than the other, barely. And they're saying, okay, some people die because they're given the less expensive medicine. That's the only reason they die. They don't get the more expensive, effective treatment. They're saying, okay, you should also think about how much you save monetarily. And then you have to think about like the grief. So it's kind of like, they're trying to make sure you think, okay, just because one is more efficient and more expensive, just because you save money on the cheaper one, you might also just like, you might have to be really sad. You might be grieving if they don't make it out after this treatment. So based off of this argument, we've got some facts, and then, we have this idea in yellow, our yellow brackets, we have since these relatives are going to be grieved, you have to consider it. Or what I love about this one is that they say that it must also be weighed. When you think about it, you must weigh this. There's a less expensive medicine, but sometimes you might also have to deal with grief if someone dies. We're going to try to figure out what are they trying to say there. Basically, you need to consider both, right? So we're looking for an answer choice that's going to get to capture that you have to consider both. ASA should never be given to post-operative cardiac patients in place of TPA. Well, what? Like, we know that there's post-operative administration, but we don't know that they're saying that they should never be given. All they've said is that we should weigh the grief against the financial saving when you're figuring out which one to use. B, TPA is a slightly more effective clot dissolving agent than ASA. Now, we want to be careful. We're going to pick this because this is one of the few things that, like, at least personally, this is one of the few things I instinctively understood, but that's a fact. Facts stand alone. We don't use that to conclude. We're not trying to prove that. C, the extra expensive TPA cannot be weighed simply against the few additional lives saved. So we're talking about the financial saving versus the additional lives saved. They're saying, hey, think about the grief that people feel. Like, it's not really easy to weigh them. This is looking like a pretty nice answer. D, ASA is less expensive clot dissolving agent than TPA. Well, we know that. That is a fact. E, relatives of a patient who has died grieve more if the patient received ASA rather than TPA. This is kind of wild because we don't say that they grieve more. That's not anywhere in our paragraph. All they're saying is that, okay, you gotta weigh the financials versus like the grief, and the grief is pretty big. You want to be really, really thinking hard about, is the grief worth it? So C would be our best answer choice for this question.